Full disclosure, as you've seen based on the title of this video, you know what game this is, but I'm going to have a hard time as I'm doing this review not having Bono in my head singing In the Name of Odin the entire time. So just know that that's what's going to be happening in my head as I'm talking about In the Name, that was a horrible toss, In the Name of Odin by NSKN Games right now. We're going to ask a couple questions of this game. For instance, how does it play? What does it look like? Why are there so many cool plastic Vikings, and is that something that's helpful or not? Is it a game you should pick up? And did I talk about that? Does it pass the BRT? If you've seen my Saga of the Northman video, you know there's the dreaded BRT, which we will talk about in just a few minutes. But let's dive in right now to In the Name of Odin. See, I almost did it. I almost sang it, but I resisted doing that because I can't sing really well, and definitely can't sing like Bono. But who can, right? We'll see you in just a minute. And here's the Viking tokens here. 3 different models, really neat looking plastic miniatures here for the different Vikings. Man, that does take an incredibly long time to set up though, but they do look really good. Plastic miniatures there for the 3 different types of Vikings. So this is the setup. So here's how it plays. Before I explain what you do in your turn, let me explain kind of what the board is right here. Down here you have your building cards. Over here you have your longship cards, raid cards in the middle. Once all the raid cards are gone, the game is over. In a 2-person game, there are 8 raid cards. Up top are the hero cards. Over there are the action cards on that track over there that my finger's over that's not actually touching. Look at that forced perspective. Your points are tracked by going around the edge of the board, a la most games, right? It's not a knock, that's a good thing. Here's how it plays. On your turn, you're going to have 6 of these action cards in your hand. As you play, you will choose to do actions until you run out of actions. Basically, what that means is, let's show you a hand of 6 action cards. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay? So 6 action cards right here. Now, the symbols at the bottom correspond to what action they are a part of. So the building symbols are the green ones. They're also the ones listed on the bottom of the board for the cost. So the green ones, that would be these right here. There's also Vikings up at the top. The last action you can do is, instead of spending the bottom symbols for an action, you can trade in the top symbols for Vikings. It's 1 for 1, 2 for 3, or 3 of the same symbol for 6. So in my hand, I could actually get 3 of these and 1 of these kind of Vikings. That'd be 3 reds and 1 blue. Now, had I not wanted to do that, I could do the bottom action, which is trade in 3 of these green symbols, and the other thing you start with at the beginning of the game is a building token. Trade in 3 of these and a building token to buy a building and put it on your personal player board. That's right, your personal player board looks like this. And they're pretty awesome because it has a place to hold your hero, hold your plastic Vikings, and hold all the buildings that you buy. If you buy a building, you have to put it on the space that matches the art. So the Jarl's home right there in the bottom left, that one would have to go here. The inn would have to go here. Shipyard would have to go here. This space is for your longships, which we'll talk about in just a minute down here. This is neat. I really do like this concept. Now, all the buildings, even though they're the same type, there's multiple different inns, do different things. They all let you have, 14 Vikings versus 10. Normally you can only have 10 Vikings on your player board, but the inns let you have 14, but they also give you victory points. That's this symbol. Anytime you see that bottom symbol, those are victory points. Plus they give you an extra Viking symbol when going on a raid and when doing other things. So that's what that's all about. These are damage tokens, these are building tokens. This is the longship action. Trade in 3 longships cards to buy a longship. They have different ranges. The ranges are the paddles at the bottom. They also have victory points associated with them here and an extra symbol they give you there. These, you have to have 2 things to go on a raid. You have to have a longship and you have to have a hero up top. At the end of your turn, you'll draw back up to 6 cards. Play will pass to the next person. The other action you can do is, it doesn't cost you any action points, but you can trade one of your cards for one of the cards in the display. So let's just say I needed the hero symbol right there. Instead, I could trade this one for that. I could do this. I'm probably in the way. Anyway, so I can get this symbol. So now let's just see where those are. If I have enough in my hand. 1, 2, 3, there we go. So and I now have 3 hero symbols in my hand. The way the hero cost is, no reason I picked 3 is because that's a good average, but you'll notice the heroes all have different costs. The hero on the left there has 4, 3, 3, 2, 2. If you pick the first hero by paying the most, you also get a victory point. When you pick one, obviously they will shift down. So if you pick her, these will shift down here, and you will draw another one to fill that slot. Heroes, you lose them after a raid, but they all have different powers. So this one, while Ozlog is in your hand side is 7 instead of 8. Wow, I just totally butchered that. I didn't even use the right word. When she's on your board, you have 7 cards as your player hand count. She also gives you this symbol of Viking, which is kind of nice. So what's the point of those? Well, real quick, let's go ahead and cover raids while I'm at it. Raids, you'll notice, have different costs associated with them that are not the normal symbols. So you would have to have 2 blue Vikings, a gray Viking, and a red Viking to do this one. It'd be worth 3 victory points, but because this one is down here at the bottom, it's actually worth 5 victory points because it gets a +2. These 2 symbols, here and here, they're random. It's one of the 3 symbols. At the beginning of the game, they stay there and add a permanent symbol. So you would actually now have to have 2 blues, 2 grays because of that, and this, and a red. You also have to have a ship that has a range of 3. So this boat could not get there. Couldn't do a raid here. But when you do it, here's how a raid takes place. You pay the Vikings that you have, you would put them back to the main mead hall up there, throw them back up there, and then you would do the next part of the raid. It works like this. Another player, if they'd like to, can play a card. It's called the match symbol part of the raid. So if they play this card, you would then have to match their card here. You say, well, what if they don't play one? Well, then what happens is if they don't play one, you still draw up to 3 cards no matter what from the action deck. You have to match up to 3 symbols. If you match all 3 symbols, you get +1 to the victory point. If you match 2 symbols, you don't lose any victory points. If you match no symbols, yeah, so I'm saying that backwards, but I'm holding it right. If you match only 1 symbol and there's 2 left, I think you lose 1 victory point. And if you match no symbols, you lose 2. It is right here in the part about matching action symbols. Yes, there's a table right here. Yep, you lose -2 fame points if you match none. So it's going to happen anyway. So just because you have all the Vikings you need and they don't play a card doesn't mean anything. You're going to draw 3 cards and you have to match 3 symbols and hopefully mitigate what happens. And that's a raid. That's the main way to get victory points. Once the raid cards are gone, they're done. When you do a raid, your longship comes back flipped over with a damage on it. No. With a damage on it. The point of these damage cards is this, damage tokens is this. Your health of your ship is as much as the range is. So now its range is not 3 anymore, it's only 2, but if you take 2 more damage, this ship is destroyed. Good news about that, and kind of the same thing with the buildings is, you can't just build buildings over the top. So once you build your building, it's there. I think Odin allows you to switch one out, so you have to kind of choose carefully what you want when you do that. Your hero goes there, I don't know if I mentioned that. Anyway, this is flipped over. You then can spend 2 of the longship card actions, 2 symbols, to flip it over, and 2 to heal a token. And that's it, that's pretty much the game. That's all the different actions you can take. Oh, the one other action that's a little bit knacky and a little bit weird, and it's kind of a pain in the butt, but it kind of slows you down from just building like a crazy person. So you'll notice that, like I said, to build a building, you have to have 3 of the green symbols and 1 of the building tokens there. Now, how do you get more building tokens? Well, the way that works is it costs you however many building tokens you have, however many buildings you have plus 1. So let's just say this is your player board. You have 2 buildings on there. So it would cost you 3 green symbols to get another building token. Then it would cost you 3 green symbols and a building token to buy a new building. So it gets more and more expensive to buy new buildings. Kind of just slows you down from just building, because there's a lot of victory points on these, and you can potentially win that way. That's how you play. That's all the different mechanics. The one other thing you can do is, instead of trading 1 for 1, you can discard a card and you can you can replace the entire display. So if you don't like any of the 4 of those, discard 1 and then replace the entire display. And that's it. That's all the actions. That's all you can do. And you play from there. You play till the raids are done, and you go and you win. And you have glory and fame. So that's In the Name of Odin in a nutshell right there. It is a very, very, very Euro game. It's not this Viking game where you go and fight each other and, you know, have pillaging, and the word pillage isn't even used. The word raid is used. So it's definitely a departure from other games in the genre, and you know what I'm talking about, which let's go ahead and get it out of the way. Does it pass the BRT, which is the Blood Rage test, which is this weird arbitrary test that people have put on Viking themed games in which you can only have one. You can only have one Viking game. Just Blood Rage, nothing else. You never need another Viking game. Well, that's weird because we don't do that with trains. I mean, look around my collection here. There's like 30 train games. There's like 100 Cthulhu games, including the RPG, for goodness sakes. We don't do that with anything else. So why do you do that with Vikings? I don't know. It's just arbitrary. It happens. But does this pass the Blood Rage test? Well, of course, because they're very different style games. People talked about how many Euro elements Blood Rage has. This game is a pure Euro game. You cannot interact with your other players except in one way, and that's in playing that card during a raid. And that's not even that interacting. In fact, it's a benefit to you. It's not something that hurts them because they're going to have to play cards anyway. It just gives you the opportunity to get a card out of your hand. So it's not even that you're trying to trick the person, it's you're trying to get a card out of your hand, really, is what it's all about. So it does pass the BRT, the Blood Rage test. So good job, NSKN, on helping further that attack on that stigma that, well, there can only be one type of Viking game. That's silly anyway, right? Here's what I like about this game. The board is gorgeous looking. It looks really cool. The components are really neat. I'm going to ding it here in a way that I've never dinged a good component game ever. The little Viking miniatures look amazing. They look so great, and there's so many of them. Good on you for producing them and going the extra mile to produce them. However, I do have one gripe. They're actually harder to grab and get a bunch of them in your hand when you need to grab them than wooden cubes, which I assume would have been the original component, would have been a wooden cube representing the different type of Vikings. It's not a huge squabble, but since you have to put them on the board, you don't have to, I guess. There's a space for them to go on the board that's really neat because they all stand up there on that space. It's just kind of hard sometimes to reach over and grab them because this one's axe will hit the other one and knock it over. Then you'll have a classic domino effect all out the Cold War, and everything just falls apart, right? But that's a small quabble about this squabble. I don't know what the word is, but it's a small problem I have with the game. It's not enough to make me not like the game. I do like this game. I think it's a solid 7. Good game. Plays pretty fast, and that's one thing I really like. It says 45 minutes. It says 60 minutes. I think that's pretty much 60 minutes no matter how many people you have playing, pretty much, because in a 2-player game, it was going to take about an hour. But it really can't take that much longer because there's not that many more raid cards, and as you saw, raid cards is what ends the game. So still plays pretty fast, and that's what I like about it. It's actually a very simple game. It doesn't look like it. When you show the back of this to somebody, they go, oh man, that looks like Game of Thrones with all the different kingdoms and soldiers and ships and actions. It's not really. It's actually almost worker placement with your cards being the workers. It's like a hand management placement game. It's kind of a hard thing to describe. I don't know how they describe it on Board Game Geek. I'm sure there's a very neat classified way of saying it, but that's what it reminds me of, is some sort of hand management, worker placement, action selection type game. So it's kind of neat. My only gripe, though, is sometimes it's kind of hard to get the cards you need, and there's very little you can do to avoid that. The only ways you can get cards out of your hand are when someone else raids, you can play a card, or once per turn you can do that action that lets you trade in the cards that are on the display and then trade one of yours for one of the cards. So there's not a lot of ways to get better cards. However, at the end of your turn, you can either keep cards or you can just spin them for Vikings and hope that you draw 6 new more cards that are, good. The heroes are a good element. They do a lot of things that break the rules and give you really cool powers. I'm a big fan of that. I like anything that lets you all have, your own special player powers and things. But it's variable too, because you lose a hero after a raid, so you get all these chances to do it. I like the raid mechanic. I like the way that works. The one I'm not crazy about is the building mechanic. But I guess you're not meant to win through buildings. It's just hard to get enough actions to get enough good buildings out there. And I guess you kind of have to decide, okay, well, I can't build everything. And you could, I guess, if you had a long game, you could build everything, but it's just going to take so many cards, because you not only do you have to have the token, you have to have the cards to build. But to get the token, you have to have cards to get the token. And then once you have the token, you have to have the cards to build. So it ends up being a lot of green token cards, and obviously other people are looking for that too. But there are other ways to get points, and that's the one thing I do like about it. There are multiple ways to go about getting points. Obviously raids being the best, but you can build a lot and get some heroes to give you points as well. That's in the name of Odin. Long talk there in a nutshell, but it's a fun game and you should probably check it out. It's especially if you like Vikings, you like that theme, and if you want a game that it's kind of that intro plus level, like it's not your intro game. That's obviously a subjective thing anyway, but you get somebody to play Ticket to Ride, they play Catan, the classics, right? And then you say, well, what about this one? It's a little bit deeper, it's got a really cool theme, but the mechanics aren't that hard. You're collecting cards in your hand. People are familiar how to do this in card games. Then you just play the cards that you have to do different things. And so it's actually pretty simple in that sense, and that's not a negative thing, that's a positive thing. So that's In the Name of Odin by NSKN. Check it out, fun game. We'll see you here next time on the latest retro at the Dice Tower. I'm Bryan Drake.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.